My doctor referred me to a licensed professional counselor for an autism assessment. And as well as not sending her the email beforehand, no wonder she was so surprised because I did the Google. Those aren't the people who assess autism. I just made an appointment with who I was referred to. He said he thought it sounded like I maybe had autism. Why am I so surprised? I mean, I haven't even heard back about my thyroid blood test, and I can see it in my patient portal. They've had the results for over a week. My T4 is low, which is what he was looking to see because he thought that might be why I was so freaking tired. And I am so tired, and I am so tired. And this is worse. This is worse than depression tired because when you're depression tired, your mind is tired too. But no, my mind's not tired. I just am physically exhausted. And when my mind was tired and I was physically exhausted, if I rolled over and went to bed, I might not be sleeping well because depression sleep isn't good sleep, but my mind and my body were in the same place, which was sleep. But my mind's firing on all cylinders and it wants to do things, and I want to do things, and I want to be productive, and I want to have the energy to do things. It's just so tired. And apparently, it's these stupid things in here. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is not uncommon. I don't understand why it's so hard for you to tell me how to adjust my meds for T4 issues. And if it's not hard, then why haven't you called me? I called them. I gave them a week and I called them. And they said they'd check, and nope. I hate talking on the phone. But they put me in the position where I had to call them multiple times last week. This week. It's Saturday. It was this week. I have thyroiditis, and you got low T4, and that I've been absolutely exhausted. Not to mention the trembling, the uncontrollable muscle spasms that occasionally happen. So you think maybe we could, I don't know, titrate my meds, see if those still happen? Something else is causing me to have 10 minutes of uncontrollable muscle spasms in my legs, because I'd like those to stop and never happen again. I don't understand. If the blood test said what he expected it to say, I don't understand. I looked up PTSD versus autism, by the way, because I was wondering, because she kept trying to steer me and be like, well, PTSD can cause these. I looked it up, and, well, no wonder she kept asking me if I had nightmares, because PTSD involves nightmares and flashbacks, and, I mean, I have the rare nightmare, generally, about, work stress. And when I was a kid, it was about my mom dying and me having to live with my dad, even though I knew my mom had changed her will to say I would live with my brother. So it doesn't particularly sound like I have PTSD. No wonder my previous therapist never mentioned it. By the way, she didn't have a problem with my previous therapist never having mentioned PTSD, but she had a problem with my previous therapist never having mentioned autism, and that being a sign that I couldn't have autism. What the? It was 2017. I looked it up. It was 2017. Do you think they were diagnosing people like me with autism when they went in for their depression counseling? No. But you know what they would have maybe picked up on when I went to counseling for depression caused by childhood abuse? I think they would have picked up on PTSD. I always thought it was kind of weird they didn't, but I never actually looked into it. The whole nightmare and flashback thing. I have trauma triggers. I get really emotionally uncomfortable if I hear Waltzing Matilda or smell Budweiser. I don't have flashbacks. I do have strong emotions, but they don't take me to the memories. They take me to the discomfort, yes, but it's never been to the extent of what I understand PTSD to be. I definitely have trauma. Do I have a mild post-traumatic stress that doesn't cause flashbacks and nightmares? Is that a thing? I don't know. But the point isn't whether or not I have PTSD. It was just the complete refusal to... She kept... Every time I brought up something social, she kept redirecting to childhood trauma, which some of my childhood trauma is from social, but we didn't get to those things. But abuse that I remember really ramping up when I was around 12. Abuse that I don't remember happening when my parents were together. I already felt like an other when my parents were still together. I felt different than my siblings. There's nothing I can point to from either parent that explains why. But you know what I do know? I've never had a lot of friends. The most friends I had at a time was when I was adopted by the popular girl, and she brought me into her friend group. And that was 5th grade. And then I moved to Boulder for 2 years, and I came back in 8th grade, and I was friends with her again, not to the same degree, and with her friends. But what I remember now is them manipulating me into pranks. And I remember that not a single one of them came to my birthday party. One girl came to my birthday party that year, the girl I invited out of pity. The thing is, I think she came to my birthday party out of pity for me. We had fun. And at least she came because in 1st grade, nobody came. I remember sitting at an empty table. I remember that my sister went around the neighborhood to gather her friends. My sister is 6.5 years older than me. She went around the neighborhood to gather her middle school friends to come to my party so that I'd have people at my birthday party. With the exception of the question of to what degree having, I don't know, it doesn't feel right to nudists to call him a nudist. Exhibitionist, I guess, parent. Legally, that's just a whole other issue. This is not why I was ever socially awkward. Um, if I were to buy into the I have PTSD and that's why I have crossover with autism, Then why couldn't I make friends in first grade? Why do I remember precisely 4 friends from the entirety of elementary school? 2 of whom weren't in class with me, they were my neighbors. I mean, real friends. And I sure thought I had more friends than I actually did in high school, which I found out through various degrees of not cruelty, just thoughtlessness weren't really my friends. There was a group of girls I'd hang out with that I thought were real friends. Do you know why you weren't allowed to hand out invitations to birthday parties at school anymore unless you're inviting everyone in your class? That's not exactly a high school level rule, but I don't think it was a rule for anyone in the early aughties of it. The girl in the group I'd have most described as my friend talked right across me to another girl in our group to invite her to her birthday party. Like I wasn't even there. That was the moment. God. I didn't put it into words exactly then, but that was the moment I realized how much better it is just to be honest about not liking or just being blah toward a person rather than pretending to be friends. Because I can't tell the difference. I've had all sorts of levels of that kind of interaction. That's just the one I can most put into the words. And it was just thoughtlessness. She wasn't snubbing me. She wasn't thinking about me. We didn't talk about any of that. Just kept bringing it back to things I've already been to therapy for. Could I use more family therapy? Family related therapy? Sure. And at some point I will do that. But I was just rather blindsided with this. Not to mention the fact that she called early, which had me freaking out all on its own. I'm sure the things she said referring back to my childhood trauma were very affirming and what I would want to hear from a therapist. It wasn't what I had scheduled an appointment for. It wasn't what I was referred to for. And yeah, maybe I should have been referred to her in the first place, but I didn't know that. This is Phoebe. Hi, Phoebe. It's 10 o'clock at night and I'm laying in bed. And I thought I was feeling better about all this today. And then I just. Well, I guess I'm not. And I have new neighbors. and I would not bet money against them having illegally removed the muffler from their truck. And they like to leave it idling. I haven't even met them yet. They didn't live here last night. So much fun. I think I'm just gonna go to bed early. Bye.